I think that they don't want, if they was in any of those freak off tapes, if they played a part in any of those Diddy sessions, they don't want it to get out to the general public to make up their...
The whispers aren't whispers anymore. They're howls. The man who once stood shoulder to shoulder with Sean Diddy Combs is now lobbing grenades straight into the mythology of hip-hop's darkest night. And this time, he isn't pulling punches.
The boy Puffy called me, though. Puffy called me back in the day. He called me, he was like, I just want you to know I ain't have nothing to do with your brother's,
For years, he's teased that Puff wasn't just orbiting violence. He was tethered to something higher, something uglier. But now, he is taking it even further, ripping the lid off the story we thought we knew about Tupac Shakur as final night in Las Vegas.
I think people had this misconception about Tupac and what he was.
He had two sides to him, yes. I'm not going to say he didn't. He was, but at the same time, he just, whatever he believed in, that's what he, that was just he voiced his opinion for whatever it was that he believed in, but he also had this caring, loving side that a lot of people didn't see.
According to him, Pac didn't just vanish in a hail of bullets on the Vegas Strip. No. Shakur slipped out of view because he finally saw where the real crosshairs were aimed. Not on the boulevard, but in the boardrooms. Not from hustlers on the corner, but from shadowy figures in suits. The financiers and fixers who use artists like pawns and create martyrs when the market demands blood. And the way he tells it?
That boy life is dangerous. His life isn't, he's just not dangerous with the they said he was doing, but he's in danger. He knows.
Diddy wasn't the executioner. He was just another errand boy, a middleman, a messenger for forces so powerful they could erase anyone in a blink.
And they're more important to the police on the streets than here, because they let them know what's going on.
That idea, that Tupac wasn't taken by chaos but by choreography, is as chilling as it is provocative. And it lines up disturbingly well with one of hip-hop's most haunting details, the eerie 7-day countdown.
And Tupac's a legend. Like I said, Tupac wasn't born, he was sent to.
Shot on September 7th, gone on September 13th, exactly 6 days later. Was this just coincidence?
So let's talk about it, man. So you feel like it was bigger than Orlando Shooter Pac. You feel like it's more to the story. You don't think it was that simple?
I feel like it's big.
Or was it ritual? What we're hearing now paints a picture bigger than beef, bigger than gangs, bigger than East versus West.
As far as, is he going to turn people in? Is he going to cooperate? If the federal government wants him to cooperate and they're going to cut his time, because right now he's looking at 15 to life. With all the charges he had to, he won't get out till 70 years old. He about 70. That's when they start talking about letting him come to a halfway.
It's a picture of an industry where bloodshed isn't random. It's scripted. And if that's true, then hip-hop's darkest night was never about the strip at all. It was about power.
Incentive just revenge, or was the incentive for that supposed money that Puffy supposedly...
The 7-day theory wasn't tied just the title of Tupac's final record. It became a prophecy. Fans still point to it as if it were a coded blueprint, a script written in advance.
Yeah. It was like with some people they didn't, like the flow. With some people they didn't like the image. It differed, but nevertheless we couldn't.
Look at the Don Illuminati, the 7-day theory album. To many, it read like a stage play. Exit Shakur, enter Machiavelli. And who was Machiavelli?
That's Puffy's homie. You know what I mean? They have a relationship. They're friendly. They know each other.
The Italian war thinker who famously suggested that faking your own death could be the ultimate strategy against your enemies.
That's why them tires is like that. That's what makes me lay a lot of suspicion on this.
Even the name itself feels like a clue. Rearrange the letters in Machiavelli and you get Am Alive K coincidence or confession? Then there's the autopsy, the so-called official photo that didn't quite add up.
Suge Knight has never identified anyone who was in the car that night, that him and Tupac.
The coroner listed Pac taller and heavier than he ever was. A cremation was ordered almost immediately, So fast, it bypassed standard procedures. And the man who handled it? He retired right after. Too neat, too fast, too final.
3 law firms on retainer. I don't know how much money is coming in, but I know that a lot of money is going out every single month for.
In a world built on chaos, the precision around Tupac's death feels more like choreography than chance. This raises a chilling question. Was it ritual silence? A symbolic vanishing, crafted by design, not accident? And if so, who benefited? That's the question people keep circling back to. Because every time an icon is lost, the same pattern unfolds. The system gains. The catalog sells, the legend grows, the control tightens. Shakur the rebel was dangerous. He spoke truth, he mobilized people, and he challenged power. Shakur the martyr? He was manageable, marketable, safe to package and resell. And the coincidences don't stop stacking up. From cryptic lyrics to eerie timelines, everything begins to feel less like a tragedy and more like a script. A play unfolding right before our eyes, written by hands far above the streets. So was Tupac's end chaos? Or choreography? Tupac's mother once said her son chose to leave quietly. And yet, 7 albums were released after his so-called death, each one fueling the machine, feeding the myth, and lining pockets. If you were scripting a ritual sacrifice in the music industry, would it look any different? And then comes the whisper that refuses to die, the Cuba thread. Passed like contraband in back alleys, shared in hushed tones among true believers. Picture it. Old Havana, pastel walls crumbling under the Caribbean sun, and a familiar figure walking with his head down, shades over his eyes, a cigar burning between his fingers. Could it be him? The family ties make the theory even harder to dismiss. Tupac's aunt, Assata Shakur, a Black Panther granted sanctuary by Fidel Castro himself, has lived in Cuba for decades under the protective wing of Havana's government. The family pipeline was already there, a perfect route for exile. And then came the claims of Michael Nice, a security man with connections to the Panthers. He said it outright. He helped smuggle Shakur out. According to him, cash changed hands with hospital staff, a body switch was arranged, and a private jet lifted off like a prison break. He swore that Tupac himself sat in the co-pilot seat. From Barbados, he was ferried into Cuba, where Castro allegedly gave his personal approval. Why do you think nobody has been arrested? If they did, they, the ones responsible, would be exposed, Nice claimed. His words echoed years later by Suge Knight himself, who slyly hinted that Tupac wasn't gone at all. That instead of being 6 feet under, he was somewhere on an island, puffing a cigar and laughing at the headlines. So was Shakur silenced forever? Or did he escape into exile, becoming the ghost who haunts hip-hop to this day? For years, whispers have swirled through the narrow streets of Havana. Locals swear they've seen him, Tupac Shakur, alive, moving quietly through the alleys of old Havana. Too familiar to ignore, too uncanny to dismiss. Photos have circulated online, some dismissed as doctored, others too convincing to brush off, showing a man who looked exactly like Pac, even posing with celebrities decades after his supposed death. And it didn't stop in Cuba. A private investigator claimed to have tracked him all the way to Belize, presenting images of an older Shakur, alive, grayer, but unmistakable. A man who may have traded spotlights for shadows. If Tupac knew his name was on a list, if he understood the ritual wasn't simply about silencing him but making an example of him, then running wasn't a cowardice. It was survival. It was strategy. Better to vanish into secrecy than play the sacrificial lamb for powers so untouchable no one dares name them. Which brings us back to Vegas and the hospital switch theory. After 6 days of public struggle, the story goes, the real Shakur was quietly smuggled away, while another body played his final act. That's why the coroner's report listed the wrong height, the wrong weight. That's why the cremation was rushed so quickly before questions could be asked. No funeral, no body, no room for doubt, no time for answers. Money changed hands, silence was bought. And one of music's brightest stars slipped off stage under the cover of chaos. It sounds like fiction, like the stuff of conspiracy thrillers. But every strange inconsistency, every missing detail, Every story that doesn't quite add up feeds the suspicion that the truth we were handed was never the full show. So did Tupac die in Vegas, or did he vanish, leaving the world with a script carefully staged to hide a darker truth? And that brings us full circle. Back to Diddy, a man now drowning in his own scandals. His name has surfaced in transcripts, whispered in sealed interviews, tied to confessions that refuse to fade away. He's been accused of offering millions to take out both Tupac Shakur and Suge Knight. It is the kind of accusation that would shatter a career, but Gene Deal AS version reframes the story. Maybe Puff wasn't the puppet master. Maybe he was the puppet. Loud enough, flashy enough, reckless enough to take the fall. While the real shot callers, the ones with reach powerful enough to make people disappear, stayed hidden behind the curtain. Because if Tupac really went underground, it wasn't about escaping one man's anger. It was about escaping the machine. The kind of machine that doesn't forgive, that doesn't forget, and that doesn't let chosen targets walk away. And now we're staring at the strangest pattern of all, the witnesses who vanish. We saw it in the 90s. Hospital workers who whispered to reporters off the record, then clammed up overnight. Bodyguards who promised explosive revelations, then wound up in headlines themselves, erased before they could talk. Insiders who teased evidence suddenly became unavailable for comment. And now, fast forward to today. Prosecutors in New York admit that victim 3 in the Diddy trial has simply vanished. Not just her, even her lawyer is off the grid. Think about that. A key accuser with damning personal details disappears on the eve of testimony. That's not scheduling, that's pressure. We've been here before. The night Shakur was rushed into the hospital, nurses and staff allegedly spoke off-record to journalists. And then, silence. Nobody wanted to go on record. Those who did later regretted it. And look at Michael Nice, the ex-security officer who claimed he had video proof of Castro personally blessing Shakur's exile to Cuba. He dropped his bombshell, and within weeks, he was gone. No more interviews, no more evidence. Just another disconnected line when the truth was about to dial in. So ask yourself, how many more voices will vanish before the full story of Tupac's end, or escape, finally comes to light? And here is the question that refuses to go away. Who benefits when those voices never make it to the stand? Every time a thread starts to unravel, it's like someone steps in and cuts it clean. It happened after Vegas. It's happening again in this federal case. The loudest witnesses suddenly go quiet, and the only stories left standing are the official ones. The ones that never explain the holes, the ones that leave you with more questions than answers. Now, we were not saying the missing names in 2024 are tied to the same hands that orchestrated the hospital silence back in '96. But we are saying this: the choreography looks eerily familiar. And that familiarity should send a chill down your spine. Because at the heart of this entire saga sits one thing: money. A bounty. A deal whispered about for decades, one that reads like a wire transfer that never cleared. In sworn interviews and secret tapes, Dwayne Keffy D. Davis alleged that Puff himself put millions, mother millions, on the heads of Tupac Shakur and Suge Knight. A number never written down, always whispered in back rooms, inflated by fear, and passed around like forbidden currency. But here's the kicker. Did the crew who pulled the trigger ever see it? Davis himself admitted that the bag never landed in their laps. The word on the street was that Eric Zip Martin, the alleged middleman, pocketed the cash. If that's true, then the shooters didn't just pull the trigger for loyalty or street honor. They pulled it believing a payday was waiting. And when it didn't come, betrayal was baked into the bloodshed. Which begs the question: was the bounty ever real, or was it another layer of smoke and mirrors designed to push the pawns forward while the real players stayed hidden? What we re-left with isn't just a murder mystery. It's a financial thriller. A game where the top floors stay clean, the middle tier takes the bag, and the streets carry the risk. A violent ledger that never balanced. That broken promise matters, because when the supposed bounty evaporates, you have to ask, was the whole offer a setup from the beginning? If someone dangled millions they never intended to pay, then the point wasn't only eliminating Shakur. The point was engineering chaos in the Southside Crips, burning their credibility, feeding betrayal into the streets, and keeping every road far away from the corporate suites where the real power resides. And maybe that is the answer to the question people keep asking. Why does this case circle endlessly without landing? Maybe it's because the payout was never meant to be real. It was bait, a trap. And when the jaws snapped shut, the accountants upstairs smiled while bodies piled up below and reputations crumbled. Loop it back to the Vegas hospital, and the pattern gets even darker. The secret switch theory doesn't just live on conspiracy blogs because it sounds wild. It lives because it rhymes too neatly with what we keep seeing today. In '96, the whispers said a body was swapped. Records massaged, coroner sheets showing height and weight that didn't match, cremation ordered at lightning speed. And now in 2025, a key witness scheduled to testify against Diddy suddenly disappears, with prosecutors shrugging, "We can't reach her." 2 eras, 2 scandals, same choreography. Silence the voices, erase the evidence, and keep the truth buried under layers of power. 2 different eras, same choreography. Switch the subject, switch the story, keep the machine moving. If they could shuffle bodies in an ER, what makes us think they can't shuffle testimony in a courtroom? And that brings us straight back to the role of Diddy, not as the untouchable kingpin, but as the fall guy. Right now, he's on trial, facing charges that could lock him away for life. The headlines paint him as the mastermind of freak-off parties, trafficking networks, and secret payouts. His name is stamped on transcripts, tied to whispers of offering millions for Shakur's head. He's the lightning rod, the noisy one, the flashy one. But look closer. If you were running a machine built on ritual silence, a system that thrives on disappearing witnesses, payouts that never pay, and cases that circle endlessly without landing, wouldn't you want someone exactly like Diddy at the front of the stage? Loud enough to draw every spotlight, reckless enough to be believable, isolated enough to eventually collapse under the weight. And all the while, the real power stays untouched. The financiers, the fixers, the shadow owners, they keep their distance. They stay unmentioned. They never sit under cross-examination. Sacrifice one noisy mogul, and the network remains invisible. But here's the truly chilling part. The trail we should be following may not be in the courts, or in the alleys, or even in the boardrooms. It may be somewhere else entirely, in the shadows where money, power, and silence intersect, and where the story of Tupac's so-called ending becomes less about murder and more about management. The trail may not lie in courtrooms or witness lists at all. It may be hidden in the music itself. When we revisit Shakur's Machiavelli era, the timing of the releases and the cryptic details buried in liner notes don't look like coincidence anymore. They look like a cipher. An artist who knew he might never get another press conference seemed to use his final recordings as a map, not a memorial. Every beat, every odd pause, every blurred photo in the album booklet takes on the weight of a message smuggled out under surveillance. What if the Don Illuminati, the 7-day theory, wasn't just art, but a covert drop designed to outlast the machine? Look closer, and the numerical games become impossible to ignore. The album dropped 2 months after his supposed passing, yet its imagery screams resurrection rather than conclusion. The cover, with Shakur portrayed as a crucified figure, transformed a studio record into something closer to scripture. And the release itself, tied directly to the 7-day theory, gave fans a puzzle box they've been dissecting for decades. Was Tupac simply flirting with biblical grandeur, or was he embedding timestamps meant to signal when his silence would be broken? Even the sequencing of tracks feels engineered. Interludes bleed into each other like coded transmissions, moments where his voice doesn't sound like a performer but like a fugitive trying to reach us through static. Analysts have claimed that certain lines, when rearranged or even reversed, resemble coordinates or hidden warnings. To most listeners, these are eerie studio tricks, experimental flourishes of a restless artist. But to those who believe in the cipher theory, they're premeditated leaks. Time bombs, disguised as tracks, planted to detonate only when the world was ready to hear them. And if that's true, then Pac's last album wasn't a goodbye. It was a survival manual. And then there's the artwork, the part most people flipped past, but fans still obsess over in forums today. The scribbled phrases in the margins, the cryptic capitalization, even the odd placement of track titles. None of it feels random once you look at the record as a coded dispatch. Some claim that the interior fold of the booklet conceals scattered letters that, when pieced together, spell out an alternate identity. Others argue the entire package reads like a simulation of a police report, a direct mockery of the system that thought it could neatly document his ending. And it doesn't stop with Machiavelli. The puzzle only deepens with the albums that followed. 7 full releases after his so-called death, too many to dismiss as simple vault cleaning. It feels less like a legacy and more like a schedule. Drops that land with the timing of milestones, not memorials. Look closely and you see it. The release dates often align with major court filings, sudden flare-ups in the East Coast versus West Coast narrative, or industry shakeups that reshaped the power tables. Why did those projects surface when they did? To casual fans, they're just posthumous gifts. But to those who believe in the cipher, the discography doubles as a shadow calendar, marking when certain walls in the industry were supposed to crack. And here's the most unsettling detail: the lyrics themselves. Over and over, lines appear that seem to anticipate betrayals he couldn't possibly have witnessed if he truly disappeared in 1996. Verses describing moguls falling under federal scrutiny. Imagery that mirrors headlines we're only seeing decades later. So what does that mean? Was it eerie coincidence, artistic prophecy, or proof that Tupac's pen never stopped moving after Vegas? For some, all of this is just poetic coincidence. For others, it's the work of a prophet, a man who encoded his observations, planting them like seeds for us to uncover decades later. Was Tupac predicting the downfall of names like Diddy? Or was he documenting a playbook he already knew would unfold step by step, long after he vanished? Those who chase the so-called cipher ledger treat it like an initiation. They gather liner notes, digital scans, bootlegs, and piece them together into sprawling timelines that overlap with sealed affidavits, indictments, and federal court dates. To them, Shakur wasn't leaving breadcrumbs about his own survival. He was leaving a survival manual for the culture itself. Because to read him literally is to miss the point. To read him as code is to realize he may have outsmarted the very machine that tried to silence him. Each hidden detail becomes less about his body and more about our awareness. Every distortion, every cryptic phrase is less autobiography and more blueprint. In this light, Machiavelli isn't just a pseudonym, it's a strategy. A declaration that the music was never meant to be consumed passively. It was meant to be cracked. And if the cipher ledger really exists, then Tupac's legacy isn't locked in the past at all. It's alive, a living document, still ticking like a time bomb, still guiding those who dare to decode it. Which leaves us with the final question, the one that matters more than whether he survived that night in Vegas. Maybe the real question isn't, did Tupac live? Maybe it's this: have we finally caught up to the instructions he left behind? At this point, we almost have to speak to you directly, like a jury weighing the evidence. You've seen the ritual patterns. You've seen the vanishing witnesses, both then and now. You've seen the broken payouts, the ledgers that never balance, the names whispered and then erased. So ask yourself, do you really believe all of this is random? That Shakur's disappearance, the sealed lips in hospital corridors, the missing names on trial day are all just accidents of history? Or are we staring at the fingerprints of a system powerful enough to write its own endings and daring us to notice? And here's the real dare. If Shakur chose exile, then this story isn't history at all. It's still unfolding. If the ritual was never about one artist, but about control itself, then Tupac's silence is part of an ongoing play, a script still being performed. And if he's alive somewhere, Havana, Belize, or someplace even more remote, then he knows the stakes better than any of us, because the whispers haven't stopped. Whispers of tapes that never leaked, coordinates that aren't supposed to surface, names that still can't be spoken on air. The question now is brutally simple. What's the next breadcrumb? And will it reach us before it too disappears? So drop your theories in the comments, because one day the silence will break. And when it does, the whole machine, the boardrooms, the fixers, the moguls, the myth makers, might collapse under the weight of the truth. Until then, stay sharp, stay watching, and remember this: sometimes legends don't end. They just wait for us to catch up.